dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky. This is WYMT Mountain News Weekend Edition.
Good evening, I'm Keaton Hall. Everything inside Letcher Independent Baptist Church was destroyed during the July flood. WYMT's Chandler Wilcox details how they've used their faith, and each other to persevere.
6 months have passed, but another rainy day brings back memories of destruction.
Yeah, we had people right here this morning that lost their homes, living in little trailers.
The church they gathered in every Sunday was heavily damaged, so the congregation now squeezes into a small basement below their nursery. That is when Pastor Bill begins what he calls God's purpose for his life.
Felt like I needed to preach messages to encourage, the saints. During this time, I find that God leads me to messages to encourage,
That is nothing new to Bill. He has preached at the church for 38 years. Tragedy is also not new. Bill's son Bobby and Bobby's girlfriend were murdered in 2016. The consistent uplifting he and his congregation get is from their faith.
Helps us get through life, everything. And when you've lost a child, everything else just kind of comes in, after that.
Now, as they look to rebuild and regroup, moving forward is coming one step at a time.
He told Moses, speaking to the children of Israel, that they go forward, Oh, we want to go back to Egypt. We like the food back there. No. Go forward. And trust God. And, he makes a way.
The church has not received money from FEMA or other relief organizations. They are instead building back with local help. In Letcher County, Chandler Wilcox, WYMT Mountain News.
Pastor Bill Jones says he hopes the church will move back into their original building by this time next year. In Estill County, a man is dead after an early morning home invasion. Kentucky State Police are investigating the fatal shooting that happened at a home along Richmond Road. Troopers found 43-year-old Jeffrey Johnson dead from an apparent gunshot wound. KSP says the initial investigation indicates Johnson entered the home armed and was then confronted by someone inside. The occupant retrieved a firearm of his own, or their own, and fatally shot Johnson. No charges have been filed at this time. 3 Wayne County men were arrested after reportedly starting a fire in a grassy field. Saturday evening, deputies responded to Sexton Road for an out-of-control fire complaint. When they arrived, deputies found 3 men trying to put out the fire. Fire officials were able to extinguish the fire. They say the fire was started in a burn pit in a grassy field. When the fire was extinguished, it was about 15 feet from a propane tank and approximately 20 feet from a home. Jeremiah Burnett, Matthew Hall, and Dustin Angel were arrested and charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment. Officials in Johnson County are looking for a missing person. Nina Hitchcock was last seen around 10:30 a.m. Saturday in the Sitka community. She was wearing green scrub pants and leaving her home in a silver SUV with 2 men. If you have any information, you're asked to call 606-789-4221. The new year has brought new gas prices a little bit higher than we're used to seeing. Since the start of 2023, Eastern Kentucky has seen a slight increase in gas prices. AAA Bluegrass Public Affairs Manager Lori Weaver Hawkins says that a big part of this is due to China's economy reopening after being on COVID lockdown. So when crude prices for oil go up, the local gas prices tend to follow. Another big factor is the overall demand for gas has gone up.
When that happens, people tend to get out and about more. They tend to even work in maybe a long weekend trip somewhere because they're less concerned about bad winter weather.
AAA officials say the average price of gas in Lexington is 45 cents more expensive than it was last month. Well, Lexington is less than 2 months away from seeing its own professional soccer club for the very first time. Thursday night's planning commission meeting was a much-needed step forward for the pro team. LSC can move ahead with plans to build a complex, which includes a 6,500-seat soccer-specific stadium. President Vince Gabbert says their youth program has amassed around 1,400 families already, and their pro roster is coming together too, with 21 signings all announced in the span of 20 days.
I think by having the pros mixed with our sporting club, it'll be wonderful for the kids to see what the dedication it takes and how they do it.
A little more than 2 months out from their home opener, and President Vince Gabbard says they're still trying to finalize an actual location for the interim.
Well, we are tracking a busy week of weather across the mountains as we close out the weekend and move into the new work week. Let's go over to UVA Wise tonight, looking at a cloudy sky back in the distance. Current temperature over at Wise, 37 degrees. And look at Mount Vernon in Rockcastle County, excuse me, looking at plenty of fog back in the distance. So some of you may run into a little bit of fog tonight as we're looking at visibility down to 1 mile in Hazard, also 1 mile in Wise, down to 8 miles in Jackson. So a little bit of fog is possible as we go overnight tonight and into your Monday morning. Temperatures middle to lower 40s, 44 in Jackson and London, 43 for Pikeville and Hazard, 45 in Manchester, and 45 also over in Somerset. So temperatures above freezing at this hour and also above average as well. Up on radar, maybe a few showers near the Cumberland Valley over portions of Pulaski, Wayne, and McCreary County, but most of us are dry at this hour. And a few more showers are possible overnight, but most of us are dry until Monday morning. A few more showers are possible as you step out the door. All that and more coming up in just a little bit. Keaton.
Thank you, Cameron. Tyree Nichols and Breonna Taylor were born on the same day, June 5th, 1993, and they were both killed by police. Dozens turned out to march through the neighborhoods of Louisville this afternoon to remember. LMPD officers killed Breonna Taylor during a drug raid at her home in 2020. Tyree Nichols died earlier this month, 3 days after being arrested and beaten by 5 officers in Memphis, Tennessee. The march in Louisville ended with a vigil for Taylor and Nichols. Well, as Memphis prepares to lay Tyree Nichols to rest this week, there are growing calls for police reform around the nation. Protests continued Sunday around the nation after the Friday night release of police body camera video showing his brutal beating during a traffic stop. On Saturday, the Memphis mayor announced the city is permanently disbanding the Scorpion crime-fighting unit that the police officers belong to. CBS News correspondent Skylar Henry is in Memphis with the latest.
He asked a question that has yet to be answered. What did I do?
At this Memphis church, Sunday's service in honor of Tyree Nichols was titled, "What Did I Do?" That's one question 29-year-old Nichols could be heard asking as he pleaded with police during the violent traffic stop that led to his death 3 days later.
Police tactics need to change, this is all across the board,
Police body camera video of the encounter was released Friday night, sparking nationwide protests into the weekend.
Say his name! Tyree Nichols!
The 5 officers were fired and now face second-degree murder and other charges. Additionally, several sheriff's deputies and firefighters involved in the incident have been relieved of duty, pending investigations as calls for further disciplinary measures continue.
If you were an officer or a first responder and you sat there and watched this young man die and you did nothing to help resuscitate him, you did nothing to give him aid, then you are just as culpable as the people who beat him down and killed him.
On Wednesday, the funeral service for Tyree Nichols will be held here at this church after he was brutally beaten here in Memphis a little more than 3 weeks ago.
There's a bill that's been sitting in Congress, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, that because of partisan politics has not been passed.
In Washington Sunday, the Congressional Black Caucus said it wants to meet with President Biden this week to push for negotiations for reforms to the justice system. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Memphis, Tennessee.
The family of Tyree Nichols has accepted an invitation from the Congressional Black Caucus to attend next Tuesday's State of the Union address. Lawmakers are sounding the alarm over their lack of access to the classified material found in the homes of current and former presidents and vice presidents. Both the leading Democrat and Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee argue the committee has a constitutional duty of oversight and access to the documents, which would allow them to address issues such as potential overclassification of material. The panel also controls funding for some intelligence agencies.
You threatened to withhold some funding to some of the agencies.
I'm not in the threat business right now, but we certainly are. There are things we need to do as a committee every year to authorize the moving around of funds.
Now, the National Archives is asking the president and vice presidents for the past 6 administrations to look through their records for any classified materials. Georgia star quarterback Stetson Bennett made headlines this morning when he was reportedly arrested in Dallas for public intoxication. The two-time national championship winning quarterback was taken into custody around 6 a.m. after being reported for banging on doors. Just last week, Bennett said he would be preparing for the NFL draft in nearby Fort Worth. It's not known how much this arrest will affect his draft stock, but this has not been its first time in the spotlight for controversy. After Georgia won the championship in 21, he appeared on Good Morning America, with many saying he appeared hungover from celebrating. Bennett was reportedly released from custody around 11 a.m. this morning. Coming up at 11, 6 months after the flood, one Breathitt County family settling back into their home that was damaged by floodwaters.
And a busy forecast continues into your new work week. All those details coming up next.